Go ahead and call the meeting to order. You've got the roll call, Teresa? Yes, I'll do that. Ms. Virgo, here. Dr. Pandolfi,
Here.
Ms. Stepp,
Here.
Ms. Weiss, here. Ms. Whitehouse,
Here.
Mr. Dees is absent, and Dr. Wilson is absent. We have a forum. Okay. All right, first up order of business is approval of the agenda. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second. Who was
Noel.
that? Noel.
Oh,
Thank you. Vader will second. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. All right. Approval of the minutes. I'll give you guys a second to look at the minutes because it's been forever since we've seen the minutes. We haven't met in a while. Then I'll take a motion to approve the minutes. Do you have a copy of the minutes? I can print out a copy. Okay, because I left.
I'm happy to donate mine.
Okay, thank you. Meeting on my phone because I typed that in the car. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes when you're ready.
It's Michelle. I move approval.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll take a second.
I can second. This is Noel.
Okay, you can choose between Noel and Rita for the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries. The only reason I'm not asking is because Teresa's counting the votes as we go, so. Okay, so we got the minutes approved. The next up is the personnel budget recommendation. I know staff has been hard at work, working on our budget, making sure that, that it's in a good format and that it's easy to understand. And tonight, as part of the process, we're going to be specifically honing in on the personnel budget. If you notice, actually, I'll turn it over to you all.
Oh,
I'll turn it over.
okay. So just a high level overview, and then I will let our expert take us from there. But as you both, or you all are aware, in the ad hoc committee, staff recommended that, or we recommended that staff would be a priority in our coming year, after which is financial accountability and process. Honoring our capital commitments being the third, and fourth being innovation through leveraging staff assets. So here today we talk about the personnel budget. So what we've decided with the increase in projected revenue for the upcoming fiscal year, that we would be in a good position to implement phase one of the market compensation study. What you will see is that average wage of full-time branch, the average wage of our full-time branch public service worker has risen from $18.50 to $20.03 per hour. The average wage of our part-time staff has been elevated from $16 an hour to 17.52. Part-time shelvers have been raised from $11.50 to $13 an hour. And the minimum hourly wage for entry-level branch and headquarters staff, excluding shelvers, is $16.50. It's important to note with these adjustments that they disproportionately affect those who are at the bottom of our pay scale, which is one of the key priorities of the library, to make Mid-Continent a desirable place to work and to offer a competitive salary that attracts talented people. So we are proposing a 6.55% increase to salaries and wages over the projected spending for this current year, and a 7.69% increase to the overall total personnel budget. Important to note, is not included in this budget is staffing for East Independence. Our intent is to evaluate the organizational structure and capacity to ensure that we're using the allotted full-time employees where they are most needed. It's likely that we'll need to increase the number of full-time employees in the 24-25 budget, but we think we're in a good position now to take existing staff and fill positions to cover us in the final quarter of 2023. Yes, right. So
Okay.
no additional staff for East Independence at this point. But that will be on the way. So now to get to the more kind of meatier and substantive content of this proposal, turn it over to our dear employee, Jennifer Ruth.
Hi, everyone. Online and in person. We haven't gotten together for a while, so you haven't had to hear me talk very much. And I apologize, I'm still a little bit hoarse from the tail end of a cold, but I'll do my best to speak up. But if you can't hear me, give me a signal and let me know. So the personnel budget proposal is on board docs, and we're going to go through that here a little bit. The first page is a summary of what we'll go through on the second page, but it's helpful to kind of see it in a snapshot format. It does include a little bit more information than what we've included in the past. So the first column is the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year for 23-24. The second column is the projected spending for this current fiscal year, the 22-23 fiscal year. And then the percentage column is the proposed budget, what it would be an increase over what we are projected to spend. And then the last two columns that are separate over there have the current year's budget and the percent of that budget that we are projected to spend for this fiscal year. And that same the format you'll see on the detailed page next, but just as a recap of what Aaron said, we are asking for a 6.55% increase to salaries and wages and a 7.69% increase to the total personnel budget. And we'll talk about how that breaks out on the second page. That has, some more details about the accounts that make up the total personnel budget. So account 5010 is the benefits eligible staff pay budget. And that is full-time staff and half-time staff that are eligible for benefits. And we are, the first line there is the combined salaries of active staff and positions that we are currently filling that are contained within those 417.5 authorized FTEs. You see the second line there has a reduction for time to fill. So like turnover, when a position is vacated, that leaves us, not paying someone for a little bit while we attempt to fill a position, or we work to fill a position, or we evaluate, where that FTE is allocated to make sure that we're filling the correct position. And so that leaves that position vacant for a little bit and then gets filled. So we take a reduction for that. There's also the third line there is a line to budget for the potential for a a fourth quarter pay increase to do a phase 2 implementation of the compensation study. So we've done phase 1 here in 22-23. We've been talking about it for a long time, but we kind of had a delay for multiple reasons. And then we're able to implement phase 1, and we're adding some to attempt to be able to do that. We hope to be able to do that. We are moving it to the last quarter of the fiscal year in order to be able to better look at both fiscal years at the same time. Not just can we afford it for the current fiscal year where we're operating, but is it sustainable? Is it something that the library can sustain going forward? So it's changing it up a little bit, but the timing of it, I think, is going to be helpful for budgeting for the staff and budgeting for the board. It will be a better way of looking at it. And it just happened to coincide with us completing the compensation study as we were getting it done. So that gives us a total proposed budget for benefits eligible staff pay of $21,875,000, which is a 6.27% increase over the projected spend for this year. The account 5020 is for part-time staff. So, we have significant part-time staff support, particularly in the branches, and that bringing up that minimum hourly wage has a significant impact on that budget, because those folks, they have higher turnover, and that's where a lot of them, the place where they are being paid is in the first quartile of grades 1, 2, and 3. So the increase that you see there of 7.74%. Over the spend from this year will be due to the increase in that first 20, bottom up to the 25th quartile of those pay grades or minimum. Yeah. That 40% on HQ's part-time wages is $10,000. It's 40% because it's is not a huge amount, but we have had we don't have a lot of part-time staff in HQ. We have substitute delivery drivers, and we have had part-time help in our library by mail program, and that position has been vacant. So we expect to fill that, and so that spending would be a little bit up from what we spend this current year. So the total pay budget is that we're proposing is $26,435,000, which is up 6.55% from what we expect to spend for this current fiscal year. The next few lines are calculations, and they're based on how much we're paying people, or on how we've spent this money in the past. 50/30 is Social Security tax. We can't get away from that. We have to pay that. It's based on a calculation of those that pay above. Unemployment, we've talked about this before. We are self-insured for unemployment, so we don't pay unemployment insurance. Instead, we just pay the actual amount if someone qualifies for unemployment, which is pretty rare. It got a little bit up there during COVID, because one of the times where we have to pay unemployment is if someone that works for us part-time loses their job if they have a full-time job. So that can sometimes be a place where we have to pay unemployment unexpectedly. But that's just how Missouri unemployment is set up. Tuition reimbursement is capped at $30,000. You can see that there. Retirement funding is a calculation based on the benefits eligible staff base pay budget, because those are the folks that are covered by loggers. It's not increasing as much as the benefits eligible staff base pay budget, because the rate that we're actually paying to loggers is going down for fiscal year 23-24. In 22-23, this current year, we've been paying 17.2%. This upcoming year, it will be 16.8%. Which gives us a 4.36% increase over the spend for this previous year. Account 5080 is the medical, dental, and vision insurance. Excuse me. Dental and vision, we don't expect to see a significant change. We are on the first year of a 3-year rate guarantee with Blue Cross for dental and vision, and so we expect those to stay the same. I want to talk about medical insurance funding. As you can see, we're showing a 20.27% increase. We talked a little bit last year, maybe even the year before, about how we were budgeting less to go into the health insurance fund in order to spend down to be within the range that is set by board policy for a minimum and maximum of that health insurance fund. If you want to go forward one slide, Cody, real quick, and we'll come back in a second, but we can look at that health insurance fund slide. That's your third page. My third page, there we go. And that's just a breakdown of how that is, how that estimate is calculated. We project that the fund balance at the end of this fiscal year would be $1.246 million about. And then $4,520,000 is what we expect to add in funding. $4,741,000 is what is projected that our planned costs are going to be for 23-24, with an imbalance that comes in on the low end of that health insurance fund minimum and maximum, but it still is within that leaves us still with a little over $1 million in that fund. The bottom section of that report there, that analysis report, shows that the cost projection of $4,741,000, some of that does come from employee contributions. So that $420,000 is the estimate for that, which means that the library, as the employer, is going to come up with the $4,321,000. We're saying 4.1 of that is going to come from the budget, and 221,000 of that would come from the health insurance fund itself, where the balance is today. So you can go back to that previous slide, Cody. And that's what makes up that health insurance line, that $4.1 million transfers over. Excuse me. So that is a significant increase, but we've had some really good claims years and have been able to keep that fund good and healthy. And we appreciate being able to do that and have that flexibility of using that fund to smooth out the costs of health insurance. The next account is 5090, and that's the ancillary insurance. So life, accidental death, and long-term disability for full-time employees. And that's a calculation based on the salaries of full-time employees, because that's how the premiums are paid for those items. So that $61,000 is just about the same amount as benefits eligible staff salaries are going up a little bit. The last account is 5110, and that's for HR administration, for the kinds of things that we do and the programs that we support in HR. Excuse me, I almost made it without having to take a drink. Our employee assistance program is real important. It's a good resource for managers and staff. We pay for background check fees. We pay for admin fees for our 457 retirement savings plan and our flexible spending account plan. We pay for mandatory compliance training. We pay for training and development and coaching for managers. We pay for recruiting and onboarding, employee recognition and engagement, and any small items we might need to do ADA disability accommodations or workplace safety accommodations. So that budget is a slight increase over what we expect to spend of 3.27%. So the total proposed personnel budget is $36,467,000, which is an increase of 7.69% over what we expect to spend for 22-23. Do we have any questions at this point? And we'll talk about that last page of the.
This is Noel.
Go ahead, Michelle. Who said? Noel. Noel, go ahead, Noel.
Can you tell me about the recruiting and onboarding? I mean, I know it's important, but that's a huge percentage. That's a huge jump. Can you?
It is. And so
Why?
we're adjusting a little bit of what we spend in other areas to cover that, but we do need to do some focusing on recruiting for some key positions. And we haven't spent a lot of money. We've focused on some other things. And I don't know that we'll spend all of that, but we want to look at some more creative ways of recruiting for key positions. So that's what that difference is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Michelle. So I just want to make sure I'm following. Are we talking about just bringing, is this an across the board? Everyone increase with the salary study?
Not at the same rate. So the salary study that was implemented, salaries, wages and salaries were set based on, a revised pay structure, and then a formula applied that included consideration for time and job and consideration for total tenure. And then we applied caps. So we can't go 100% as far as a formula like that would say someone needed to go into a pay range. And so we applied caps at the 75th percentile. We applied caps at only 60% of that calculation difference. And then we applied caps to what anybody in particular's total pay increase would be. So the pay increases on the lower end averaged about, I don't know why I'm trying to make it up or remember it. On grades 1 through 3, that was about a 9.9% average increase. On the
Hey, how many grades do we have?
now we have 17 before senior leadership, but senior leadership is in the process of being evaluated in terms of how that's going to be structured and what that.
So
pay
this is
going by.
not, this increase doesn't have anything to do, well, I mean, it does have some management, but it's not senior leader.
It doesn't have any, it doesn't have to do with it does have to do with management, because they're, the branch managers, department managers, et cetera, hadn't seen a pay increase for a little while.
What's a little while?
Like 2 years. We worked on bringing up the minimum wage on the bottom end up through the level of about assistant manager 1 in the branches. And in order to make some progress and finish this compensation study, to make sure that we were compensating managers fairly, but we also have been, we have a compensation process for managers that doesn't put them at exactly the minimum when they start. Which is not the case for hourly workers, where they start at the minimum of their pay grade. So they didn't have the same, they didn't need the same amount of movement on their pay grade, spend the same amount of money to put them where they should be based on their time and job and tenure. And anything that's being done for senior leadership is capped at 6%, but most are at 3%.
Yeah, I mean, 6% is just with what we've got going on right now. It's a lot. And okay, thank you.
And we can talk some more about that. Like I said, that and
I'm all for, especially, I mean, I've been a proponent of, we need to raise the bottom levels for sure. I mean, this is not, but this is, we've got some other really serious issues. So this is a lot. So that's all that's all the thinking out loud I'm going to do for the moment.
Is there something in particular that you want us to provide information about, Michelle?
No, I guess I just need to look over it more. I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out how we do it in not such a drastic, I'm not saying it's not needed, at all. It's not a secret. We have some other issues we need to be dealing with, and we absolutely need to take care of our people. I'm not saying we don't. I need to wrap my head around some of it a little bit more than.
Well, we've built into not, if we're not going to do a pay increase for the upcoming year, we wouldn't be doing it until Q4. So if that ends up being a thing that we decide not to do, or.
Oh,
we
I'm
need
not
that money-
saying not do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's just a jump. So,
And Michelle, if I could add, when you view it in relation to the other buckets, this in essence is maybe a personnel budget overall. It's a 1.4% increase over this last budget year. So then that increase is reflected with the other budgets as they relate to operations. So maybe when we look at it in isolation, things maybe seem high, but overall, it's a modest increase in the overall personnel budget. But
Okay.
what I'm hearing from you, and I think what would help me also is if we could see how the pay increases lay out by job class.
Yes.
And maybe there's a visualization that we could put together that would kind of show how the money lays out across all the personnel that we have.
yeah, I mean, that might help. And I mean, because I've been saying for a very long time, we need to fix this. So I'm not saying no, I'm just trying to figure out how we go about it. I mean, and I guess I need to see the whole, I mean, I also understand this is just a small portion of the budget, or not a small portion, but it's just a portion of the budget, and that we have other things too. So, that's it. I'm not gonna go crazy on you, I promise.
Yeah, and we went, what Aaron was saying, we went from, instead of just being 60% allocation, like we've kind of come on to in the past, it's at 61.4 for this upcoming budget year. So.
Not that it's a 1-for-1, but you'll see other areas where proposed budget for 23-24 is less than our actual expenditures at 22-23. But again, it's a work in progress here. I mean, we're sharing this with you
Absolutely.
now. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we can look at, and I did want to say, because I didn't go all the way there, for exempt staff, so benefits eligible staff that are exempt. So we're talking about, function managers, people managers, branch managers, and the average increase was 6.36%. So that's on, those folks that we were talking about that haven't had an increase in a couple of years. Their increase was 6.36%, and grades 1 through 5 average, those are all hourly employees, was 8.11%. Grades 1 through 3 was 9.9%.
Okay.
So, the last page is the estimate, the budget estimate by department. And we put that in the format, or I put that in the format of the personnel data report that comes through finance committee every month that we've started doing. So we can, see on a little bit more micro level of where the dollars are being allocated and how they're being spent. There will be variances at this micro level because of not knowing particularly, if someone leaves a position, returns, if there's any kind of restructure that's called upon, if we're going to do, continue to do structure and capacity evaluations to make sure that we've allocated the right people in the right places, the right personnel dollars, the right areas. So there may be we may see some variance as we go through the year. This is a new way of doing it. So I say that we probably will. For example, like this year, as we moved through and started doing this report, community programming would come up as a place that was off. And that was because we did have a 40+ year staff member retire who had rarely taken a day off and had a PTO payout that made a difference in a budget percent-wise. Okay. So in that personnel budget by department, There's a 8.31% increase in branch staff, both, the combination of branch managers and frontline staff. There's 13.56% in special services, primarily due to the Culinary Center. This will be the first year of it being fully operational the entire year, or fully staffed the entire year. And in Square One and Story Center, those both had vacancies in this previous year that are now filled. And so we'll see, that's what the dollar increase over the spend, what we see there. We can see that there is only a 3.86% increase in materials and circulation support. We have attrited some positions in tech services and collection management services in order to, respond to some of the other staffing needs and, how the work has changed over time. The budget for programming support in HQ is down 3.87%. I can't talk. Overspend from 22-23, but like I said, some of that has to do with the payout for a long-term employee, which comes up really quick. And then the HQ operation support total is up 14.03%. And that is due to having a library director for a full year this upcoming year, and our plan to focus on right-sizing the finance department, which Era brought up as part of the budgeting priorities. So having the more staff to assist in making sure those financial controls and anything that we're going to be doing there, that we have staff in place to make sure those things are done right. This is similar to some reorganization and growth that we've done in the security department and in my department in HR in order to help with risk mitigation and professionalism and all of those things. I did put the adjustment for turnover and potential pay increases in a separate line at the bottom because there's no really good way to distribute that allowance among the departments that would be very accurate, but so it's there at the bottom. But that total line then matches up with the wages and salary budget proposal on the account details page. So
Okay. I'm good.
Anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Just looking at the percentages, proposed budget versus what it was last year, it looks like only one area went down. And that's because personnel retired, right?
Yeah. When we have, when someone leaves, particularly if they go, after they've been here a long time, they have banked up vacation stuff that gets paid out to them.
What other areas have you looked at or thought about that could also go down in percentage instead of going up in percentage?
Yeah, I think we talked about that. We've done that in technical services where they process materials. We've done that in collection development where they have selectors. The branches, because they're looked at as a group, there's a constant evaluation of making sure that we have the right amount of staff allotted to each branch. And then this particular year, year over year, until we get into looking at what some of the things are going to be that we might do different as we go through the year, it's hard to say. But everything's always, we're always evaluating capacity. We're always evaluating efficiencies. So it could come from a surprise place when we start looking at things. That happens. And it happens a lot actually when we start looking at things. So there was a restructure among the programming departments this year where those monies are allocated, where that staff is allocated in terms of their focus. So, we expect that those types of things will always be happening, and that we don't want to have too many staff. We want to have enough, and we want to have the right ones in the right places doing the right things, especially when things change. When we do things, technology gets updated. We want to make sure we're doing all that right. So that's kind of a constant process. That's why this is definitely an estimate and not a full, as far as breaking it out by department, definitely an estimate and not a full budget. for those departments, because it just, wouldn't be something that that would just kind of tie us into not being able to be flexible and agile throughout the year to make changes as we need to make them. Particularly with a new director who has some ideas.
How are you?
Anybody else had questions? Yemi, did you have a question?
No, I'm good.
I just had two quick questions, softball questions. Because you've done a really good thorough job here. First question being, how much of an impact would you say on the budget has there been by having most of our branches open for the first time in years?
Yeah, we are seeing that. We're seeing that our benefits eligible staff, if we had a closed branch, we were using them at other branches, other locations, in order to not hire there and keep the cost down. So we don't hire, and then when that branch opens back up, or a new branch, then we remove that staff and we have to hire to fill those holes and any holes that were anybody left from this. So we kind of have seen those spikes as we go through. But I would say that the customer experience team is, working real hard to try to, make sure that we are operating as efficiently as possible, and that we are preparing for those moments when we see that uptick. So.
The second question I had, which I thought Michelle would have asked, after this proposed increase, are any of our staff below $15 an hour?
Yeah, the shelvers are still below 15.
And how does that?
This is the pay increases have been implemented because they were part of this last year's budget. So that's where that happened. But right now, the shelvers, they all make the same amount of money. And they're called library pages or circulation aides, depending on their job duties. But they make the same hourly wage. They all make 13. And then when you go above that, that's where our graded positions start. So a grade 1 is a driver, delivery driver, custodian, or a customer service associate 1, and that minimum is $16.50.
The reason why I'm asking too is because how does that mesh with Kansas City moving to a minimum of 15?
Honestly, we are probably exempted from that.
Okay.
So I haven't looked at their ordinance. I know that I've looked at their previous ordinance, and they typically exempt public entities from that. But we'll take a look at it. Pages shelvers we don't have a hard time hiring them, or it's just a role that lots of students and lots of retirees, they do a fantastic job. Since it's such a very limited role, it doesn't require a lot of technology skills or that sort of thing. It's very helping a customer find things, putting things away, reading shelves to make sure they're organized. So it's very targeted position, and it is exclusively part-time. In our other positions, we have employees that are part-time, half-time, full-time, but in the case of shelvers, they're exclusively part-time. So.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, the next agenda item is, I believe.
Before you go to that, I wanted to explain why there's no voting item on this. I've talked to Michelle, but being that we have the budget committee, this would go on to the budget committee, but this gives this group here a time to really delve deeply into the numbers. And then if there are questions here and at this level, let's hash it out in the upcoming days, so that when it's actually finally goes to the budget committee, they kind of have an idea of where the personnel committee believes we should be.
So we're open to questions. You know, if you need more information after this meeting, we're happy to provide that. There's even more information beneath each of these spreadsheets. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Ready to move on?
Yeah, next agenda item would be the operating budget overview.
So attached in your packet is a draft of our operational budget, our operating budget. And with us is Quan, and I was hoping that Quan could just give us a high-level overview of the budget as it stands today and its relation to our projected revenues for 23-24.
Yeah, on the screen, you can see it's a draft of the operating budget. On the far right column, that's the draft of the budget for next fiscal year. Next to that is the estimate for current year's operating expenditures. And the other one is the current year's budget, and also I included fiscal year 21-22 actual numbers. On the revenue side, the tax revenue after the transfer of $6.5 million to a debt service, we believe we will receive about $57.9 million for as a tax revenue. That's about $3 million more than current year's estimate. For grants, we receive E-rate, state aid, and A&E from Missouri. That totaled up about $880,000. Final fees is a little over $600,000. The biggest increase is from other service charges. We have started to providing passport service, meeting room rental, book sales, and add them up, that's about $275,000. That will give us a total operating revenue of $59.7 million. On the expenditure side, Jennifer just explained the payroll, which is about $36.4 million, 61% of the total budget. Next category is the library materials. We will keep it close to $10.7 million. That's about 20% of the budget. We have a new category called the library programs, two subcategories under that. The first one is the adult and youth programs. The next one is the mission enhanced programs. We have Reading Rocket, Culinary Center, Story Center, Square One, and Genealogy. Those are the mission enhanced programs. That's about $967,000 for all the programs. The rest of the budget is for operational needs. That's about $11.2 million, which is about 10% higher than current year's estimate. We did not, we separated the investment income from the revenue budget, and we grouped the investment income along with a possible short-term financing cost. We believe the cost for short-term financing can be offset by the interest income for the year. The short-term financing cost is based on $10 million at 6.5% interest rate for 4 months. Subtracting the expenditure from the revenue, we may have a small surplus, $350,000. that amount, we can transfer to the capital project fund for future capital maintenance needs. So, at the end of next fiscal year, we could have a ending fund balance about close to $36.5 million. But I think we may need to make another transfer to finish up the capital plan for about $9 million from the operating fund. But that will be part of the capital project fund budget, will be presented later. So that's a quick overview of the operating budget.
Thank you. Not gonna get into this part of it outside of the personnel committee because there are other committees that are gonna be looking at these, but I think it's helpful, and thank you, Aaron, for doing this, for us to see everything at once. That was no small feat. We appreciate that. Because as we go into it, we can see all the buckets as we look at it individually as committees as well.
Sure. And just to note, I mean, we heard the board loud and clear about budgeting to budget, which is why we did our best to kind of estimate expenditures in this fiscal year and position them alongside our proposed budget for the coming year. Yep.
Anyone online have anything to say or add? Okay. Do you have any visitors' comments?
No,
No.
just for clarity, I can. Cody, can you also hear us? We're kind of quiet. We'll make sure they're still there. Yeah,
Yes, I can still hear you, Teresa.
thank you.
Okay.
No, there were no visitor comments.
Okay, any other business?
Nope.
Okay, I believe then I'll take a motion to adjourn because I'm not sitting here all night.
So move.
Okay, thank you, Rita.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain?